Hi, my name is Gina.
I'm Vivian.
I'm Eli.
And I'm Stephanie.
And we are Group 6. Our presentation is on Athens and Sparta. We're going to be comparing and contrasting them. So our question that we got through our research is, what lifestyle choices did Athens have that were different from those of Sparta? And through our research, we came to a hypothesis, or came to a thesis, that Athens and Sparta are different because Athens had more of a focus on their democracy, education, and philosophy, while Sparta had more of a military focus. However, they are both similar through their beautiful and historic ways that are still talked about and taught today. Okay, so in this presentation, we're going to talk about the differences in government, daily life and culture, education, and then we're going to talk about their different trading styles and main important historical events that happened in the two city-states. Okay, so first we're going to talk about the government. Athens was a direct democracy, meaning that the people directly got to vote on decisions that affected them. It became a direct democracy around 500 BCE, and their lawmaking bodies were split into two groups. It was the Council of 500 and the Assembly. The Council of 500 was 500 eligible citizens, and they were selected by drawing lots once a year, and they got to stay in the council for 1 year. And then there was the Assembly, a group of 6,000 citizens that had to vote on proposed laws, and it had to be 6,000 citizens. According to my research, I found that some, if they didn't have 6,000 citizens, they would have slaves basically corral votes, like corral people to come by roping them and putting red paint on them, and they would basically be so embarrassed that they would go and vote. So the council met every day, and they were in charge of the day-to-day governing of Athens and daily stuff. And the assembly met every 10 days, and they debated on issues and the policies and the different laws that the council put forward, and they got to vote on them. And again, this was open to any citizen, but when we say citizen, we're leaving out women and slaves because only free men over 18 had citizenship status. And for the Spartan government was an oligarchy. And that basically meant that a small group of people controlled the whole city-state. Their governing body consisted of the elders and an assembly. So the Council of Elders consisted of 2 kings and 28 elder nobles. And the elder nobles had to be 60 years old, at least. They were elected by the assembly. According to my research, they would elect people to the Council of Elders by kind of a cheering system, like whoever was the loudest and most enthusiastic was the person that got voted for and put into the Council of Elders. And then there was the assembly. They were made up of free citizens. And the assembly actually had little power. The council made most of the policies and the governing decisions. The one thing that the Spartan assembly could do was vote yes or no on the different laws and propositions that the Spartans put forward, the Spartan elders put forward.
Okay, so one of the main cultural differences was the goals and values between Athens and Sparta. In Athens, they focused on education, art, and philosophy, whereas in Sparta, the focus was more on military strength, size, and fighting capabilities. Athens thought to be wise meant to be educated, to be creative, and to be well read. And in Sparta, to be wise was to be elite and in knowing how to fight. Athenian society valued women more than Spartans did because in Athens they saw women very valuable due to motherhood and how they were able to bring a child into life. And this led Athenian women having more respect and power than those in Sparta. A similarity that they shared was how historic they were. Both Athens and Sparta were two of the first city states in Greece, and their beauty and intelligence, as well as their styles of life, are symbolic to us today. And the reason that we read about Athens and Sparta in school is because they are not only the first, but the most impactful and successful city states. And daily life in Athens looked very different than that in Sparta because in Athens it was very home based and family oriented, which was also kind of basic. They had a very simplistic lifestyle, even down to the foods that they ate. And in Sparta, they had a very strict living ways and disciplinary ways. And from age 7, boys were taught to train and be in the military and fight. And in Sparta, you weren't someone unless you knew how to fight or were in the military.
So as mentioned, Sparta was very military focused. So its primary goal for Spartan education was to produce strong and disciplined warriors for war. This type of education system started from the age of 7 up to the age of 30, and it was organized by the state. Sparta believed that the upbringing of future citizens should be centralized and be kept under the control of state authorities. So once the boys turned 7, they were separated from families and sent to live in a communal setting with other Spartan males. This is where they underwent rigorous physical and military training, and they were taught how to endure extremely difficult circumstances, which I will discuss shortly. And females, like males, took part in physical training. For the purpose of educating Spartan women was for them to become strong and healthy women to give birth to strong children. And like mentioned, some of the methods that they used to educate these children were one, ritual beatings, and these were done as a way to show them how to stay strong and focused even when faced with pain, similar to the challenges of a battlefield. And they were also trained to withstand cold temperatures, so they were not allowed to wear no more than one cloak in the wintertime, and they were also forced to walk barefoot. Starvation was another one of the methods they used, and children pretty much had to starve or were fed very little, so they learned how to steal food. And a boy who was caught stealing would expect a beating, so they would learn how to steal carefully next time. So unlike Sparta, Athens' primary purpose for education was to shape boys into virtuous and morally good men. This type of education system was more traditional as they were taught subjects such as math, music, literature, and sometimes incorporated dance and singing lessons. Education was mostly managed privately, often by families or individual tutors, and families, or mostly men, the fathers of the boys had the freedom to decide their child's education, so they would decide what subjects they would learn, what teachers they should have, and how long they should be at school. And part of this education system, children were required to memorize and recite works of Homer and other epic poets. So Athens believed that teaching boys to memorize the works of Homer and other epic poets provided them with moral guidance. And physical education was also part of this education system. Protagoras, a Greek philosopher, suggested that physical education taught by the Paedo tribes, which were the trainers, aimed to ensure that a young man wouldn't be afraid or lack courage in battle due to a lack of fitness. So therefore, he believed that physical education not only made the young man physically fit, but also brave. And this type of education system also depended on social class. Wealthy families had more opportunities than a poor family. So how much money a family had determined the variety of subjects a boy could learn and the duration of his schooling. And then another way that wealth had an impact on education was that families had to have enough money to pay the fees for the teachers, which was quite expensive.
All right, now we're going to talk about some training and the power that Sparta and Athens are compared to. When it comes to training, Sparta was more of like a professional army. The men, like Vivian said, and also Stephanie, that they went into military training at a very young age, at the tender age of 7. Their training was mainly focused on like discipline and like combat and like fitness skills. Like the methods were like very crucial, just like Stephanie explained. And then when it comes to like power on the battlefield and stuff, Sparta was more concerned about like maintaining the status quo rather than expanding. And then their power within like the leaders and stuff was always like a dual kingship. And then when it comes to Athens, Athens training was mainly like citizen soldier based. It was not as intense compared to Sparta. Um, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say if like the Spartan soldiers were a lot more like better warriors per se, because obviously we don't know, but I mean, you can only guess. And then they were mainly like part-time soldiers, and it was only focused on like the inner city and like protecting it and making sure that nobody came into their home. And then when it came to their power on the battlefield, like it was mainly like a naval power. Decisions were made collectively, and they mainly played like defense and offense compared to Sparta, with as if Sparta mainly played like offense and like attacking. And then when it comes to some main events, Sparta had the Peloponnesian War, which started in 431 and lasted to 404 BCE. Sparta led the Peloponnesian League against Athens and the Delian League allies. And then the Battle of Thermopylae, which was in 480 BCE, during the Persian Wars, where a small Greek force led by none other than King Leonidas of Sparta, which referenced the movie 300. And in the Battle of Lucretia, which was in 371 BCE, Theban general defeated Spartan forces, which caused the decline of the dominance in Greece for them. And then for Athens was the Battle of Marathon, which was in 490 BCE. It was a conflict between the Greeks and the Persians, and then Athens played a role in repelling the Persian invasion. Then the Sicilian expedition, which was in 415 to 413 BCE, it was a disastrous military campaign, and it was led by Athens against Syracuse in the Peloponnesian War, which weakened their position in the war. And then Battle of Salamis, which was in 480 BCE. It was during the Persian Wars where the Greek fleet and ships from Athens defeated the larger Persian army, which secured the independence for Greeks. And then thank you for watching our presentation. And then this is our works cited.